Hey, Magic Makers, listen up. If you are done overcomplicating getting healthy, then I have something for you. My latest mini course, The Healthy Living Fundamentals, will help you to lead a simple, healthy life without giving up the foods that you love. All right, I see the eye rolls. Okay, maybe I hear the eye rolls. So let's think about it. How many of you have this effed up relationship with your body so that you go off and you're trying to find the hardest thing you can do to prove to yourself that you got this, that you are this badass? Well, hint, hint, you are this badass. So if you're done trying to chase your tail, trying to string 75 hard days together, you're done always feeling hungry, eating less calories than you need to survive on. And if you feel that you have to be perfect to get results, this mini course has your name all over it. The Healthy Living Fundamentals mini course, I spill all the beans, giving you simple strategies to help you become more consistent with your nutrition. All you got to do is go to the link in my bio and boom, you have it. And it will be 5 awesome days where you get a breakdown of how to do it, plus action strategies to add it to your lifestyle right now. Go over, grab it in the show notes, and good luck. Welcome to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you are ready to find your inner magic, develop great habits, and a rock steady mindset to feel confident, comfortable, and fit in your body, you are in the right place. I am Kim Barnes Jefferson, and I'll be giving you weekly doses of health, fitness, and life tips sprinkled with humor and real talk. If you're ready to be consistent without the stress of perfection, Magic Makers, it's time to slip into your favorite pair of PJs, grab some coffee, kick back, and listen to today's show. All right, ladies. Oh, my goodness. I had an amazing conversation with Matt Travis, and he is the first gentleman that I've ever had on the show. Over 100 episodes, and I just had one dude, and he was the right dude to kick us off. He was absolutely, I could have talked to him for hours on end. He was absolutely fabulous. We talked about NLP, and I've heard of NLP for a while, but we talked about so many ways that he brings NLP into weight loss. And, we talked about like, how do you create your lowest standards? How do you develop deal breakers for yourself? What are the different ways that you can start to prioritize yourself and get into flow? How do you bust through resistance when you tell yourself something that you want to do, but you don't seem to always get to do it? And lastly, one of the things we totally vibed on was asking great quality questions. How do you ask yourself great quality questions so that you can bring out the best in yourself? But also, how do we as coaches ask our clients great quality questions so that we can start to bring the best out in you as well? Have a listen to this conversation. I'm sure you're going to get as much out of it as I did. So enjoy. This week's iTunes review is brought to you by ML Martel. She writes, 5 stars. Kim is more than just knowledgeable in just health and fitness. She is supportive, reassuring, and on the level. She gives it to you straight, just the way most people need it. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that review. And you too can review Fit Girl Magic Podcast. Just go to iTunes or wherever you subscribe to this show and just leave me a 5-star review. I love them. I take them to heart. I just want to make sure that I'm bringing you the best stuff. So thank you so much for all of you who have left me a review so far. I can't wait to highlight you. All right, Magic Makers, today is a first. Yes, a first. I am interviewing a gentleman. Yes, a gentleman. He is the first gentleman that I have had on the show. And we've done over 100 episodes and I haven't had a gentleman on. So I liked him so much because we're going to talk all about mindset. And mindset, I think, is this actually, I don't think, I know. It's this word that gets bastardized, and that so many of us think we have a good mindset, or we don't think we have a good mindset, or we don't even know what the hell mindset really means. Just things we've read on the socials or just things we've heard. But we're going to talk to someone who that's his jam. He is all about mindset. And guess what? He works exclusively with women. So he fits right into our magic maker world. Welcome, Matt Travis, to the show.
I am so excited to be here. I feel so blessed and grateful to be the first guy on your podcast. This is the coolest thing ever. So thank you.
You are quite welcome. So, we had a little bit of a conversation before, and one of the things I really wanted to delve in is that we talked about, you and I both have been trainers for years. And the first question we typically ask people are like, okay, Sharon, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And a lot of times they come to us and their goals are very clear. Like I have a wedding, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. Sometimes they look at you like, I got nothing. So how do you work with your clients to really help them to get clarity around what it is that they want?
Yeah, I think the best way to achieve clarity in anything that you want to accomplish in life is by asking the right questions. Questions, just a good quality question can pull out the right answer.
Yes.
Right. But if you're asking yes or no's, or things that are just not necessarily going to emit an emotion, or just cause them to think, like take a step back and really understand, like, what do I want? I ask questions all the time, and people will tell me what they don't want.
Oh, 100%.
All day, over and over again. I don't want to gain weight. I don't want to have this. I don't want to have that.
Right.
And it's like when I say, well, what do you want? It really kind of stops them, and it makes them have to think and change the way that their brain is formulating what they actually want. Because most of us are focused on what we're trying to avoid rather than what we're trying to attract.
Right. Or you get that pat answer, like, oh, I want to lose weight. Okay, great. Losing weight is like, I want to go to California. You're like, California is a big state. Like, can we narrow down at least the county?
Absolutely. And of course, people are like, I want to lose weight, and you can go to the bathroom and lose a pound. So it's just like,
right.
It's we have to be specific and get really clear on, what does this look like? What does it feel like? And how do you, what does life look like when you get to that?
Yeah. I find that for a lot of people, they don't dare to dream. They've been stuck in this place of, I can't. And the thought of that magical Oz land where, whatever the goal is, they're like, that's not for me.
Yes. And something interesting, Kim, is I work heavily in the subconscious mind world, where people will come to me with a goal that they want, right? Let's say Sharon was like, I want to, and I always use the word release instead of lose, because if you lose something, you can find it. And I also use release. And I don't use lose weight, I use release weight, because this is another thing that people don't think about. Any other area of your life, when you lose something, it's not a good thing. Right? If you lose a game, it's not necessarily positive. If you lose your keys, it's a problem. If you lose a relationship, it's an issue, right? If you lose things, it's a problem. But yet we think in our mind that losing something, when it comes to weight, our brain doesn't actually our subconscious doesn't see it that way.
Gotcha. Because it's kind of like, if I tell myself I lost something, your brain's like, well, then we must find it.
Yeah, where is it?
Right.
And we don't want to find it.
Is it under the couch? Is it under the couch? Like, it's just trying to find ways to find it. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So it's changing our terminology. So when I'm helping people release weight, it's helping their subconscious identity and habits align with their goals, because their goals are one thing, but they're at that point usually not the person that they need to be to sustain those goals for a long term. One of my favorite things when I was reading about your podcast and learning about it was sustainability. Like, that is the number one thing when I work with clients. Because if we get you results and you can't keep them, that I think is the biggest problem in our industry in general. right? It
100%.
has to be long term, has to be. So it's how do we get these habits, these subconscious habits, and this subconscious identity to align with the thing you want, right? So that it can be sustainable long term.
Yes. Yeah. I absolutely love that because I feel like just what you said, I'm big into sustainability because anyone can do, white knuckle it for 30 days, hell, 90 days. But on day 91, I'm like, what happens when you go on vacation or you want to go out with your sweetie or, just life gets really busy. So many people lose their shit because they're like, they don't know how to operate outside of this like box.
Yes. Yes. So it has to become kind of who you are and what you do. Because
Right.
you think about it this way, Kim, you and I, we woke up this morning and we weren't like, you know what, I'm going to give this procrastination habit a try. You know what, how about we do this junk food eating habit? You know what, next, let's just Netflix and chill out. We don't think about the habits we do.
Right.
Just do them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like a lot of people will do like a 90-day fix or a 21-day this or a 30-day that. And they're in what I call challenge mode.
Right.
But they can do it for a short period of time, but it's not who they are on the inside, and therefore that slowly starts to creep back to their old identity and habits. So in order just to reach that goal like we're talking about and sustain it, it has to be an identity and a subconscious identity and habit shift.
So when, someone comes to you and you're trying to kind of go into their subconscious, is it questions that you're asking? Like, how do you kind of break through their kind of armor of what they've told themselves for decades?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's two ways that I do it. I do it consciously. So I use a lot of like neuro-linguistic programming techniques to kind of break through their subconscious belief. Because I think of a belief as think of it like it has four legs of a table. Right. So it's this table. And once you start cutting the legs off of the belief or the story, then the table falls. Right.
True.
So the belief can't survive. So that's one way that we do it. And it's questions. Right. When you ask questions, they start to think, and then they're like, that's not true. And then I also use something called rapid transformation therapy, which is a form of hypnotherapy created by Marissa Peer. And when I added that into to what I do with people, it changed everything. Because my question for my whole time, and I've been in the health and wellness industry for like 15 years, and it was always this, and I think your listeners will appreciate this. How do you get results, sustain them, and keep them forever? And when I was trying to figure that question out, it was like, I started as running a fitness facility. And then I was like, why isn't this sticking for some of these people? Right. Then I was like, it's got to be nutrition. So I just kept going and I was like, all right, I'm going to get my nutrition certification and do this.
Right.
I was like, why isn't that sticking for people? And then I did all of Tony Robbins courses, all of Jim Rohn's courses. I just went into the quote unquote mindset world. Right. And I was like, how come this stuff isn't working? Right. And so then when I got into the subconscious and I understood that like, we don't actually control what we do. It was really interesting where I started to like, because this is the biggest thing. You cannot personalize the things that you just do, folks, like the habits. Because when you try to make that first change, people get so, they're like, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? Right? They get into the I'm broken mentality. And I'm here to tell you folks that it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the subconscious habit. And it just does what it does. It doesn't know whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, helpful or unhelpful. It's just there, and it thinks it's been keeping you alive this long.
Yeah, it's a protective mechanism. And I think so many of us, when we get to be adults, we forget about when we were kids. We didn't just come out of the womb walking. It took us a while to just even learn to roll over. And then it took us a while to figure out the crawling thing and the walking thing. And it was a process. And I think what you see it, you've seen them all over the place. Like I could turn on the TV right now and it's like, just eat this, like eat these things, and the weight will just never come off. And then you're like, well, I get bored eating these things.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so you get out of that habit. And so now you're back to you.
Absolutely. And a great question is, why do you get bored? Right? Like here, like I can go off of all of the things. When someone tells me something, I say, well, where's this boredom come from? Right? And we can go down that rabbit hole because most fitness, nutrition, all the health stuff, it's emotional. Like
100%.
it is emotional, right? And I've found that when you can get to the deeper meaning around why we do what we do, like when we're working with our clients, like it's what's the meanings and rules you have around these things, right? Like around parties, around holidays, around like what are the meanings and rules that you have around those things?
Yeah, and the operative word there is meaning, right? It's like we create our own vocabulary in our head. So it's like for a lot of people, right now I'm working on a program about the summer, and so many people will tell themselves, "Summer, my kids are out of school. I want to go to the lake, the beach, the blah blah blah, and I don't want to be controlled."
Yep.
And so they tell themselves, "Summer's not the time." Then guess what? School comes, and I got to get the kids back. I got to get the kids back on their schedule, and so I'll do it when the kids are settled. And then it's like there's always a procrastination reason.
Absolutely. And can I share a piece about that? Because there's been something because I've worked with moms for 10 plus years, and one thing that I've learned is that they're the best people on the planet. Moms are just awesome. And what happens is when you first have this child, right, you look at them and you have this unconscious connection, like I will do whatever it takes to make sure that this child has the life.
Right, exactly.
Right? And what happens sometimes, many times for a lot of the moms that I work with is they forget that when they care for themselves first, that it creates that ripple effect for the child, right? But there's an emotional need that's met when they're like of service to their kids or their significant other, or all these things, right? So they get a need met by doing that, and unfortunately, many times it puts them on the back burner, right? And I will tell you, the number one hypnotherapy session I do is around enoughness. Hands down, the number one that I do. And enoughness falls into two categories, folks. I just want to explain the difference. So there's enoughness from a self-worth category. Okay, so believing that I should invest time, money, and effort into my health and well-being. And there's also capability.
Preach.
Right? So it's like that capability piece is, can I do this? Am I able to do this? And of course, our understanding of what it takes, right? People are like, well, I don't have an hour to go to the gym, so I'm not going to go to the gym, right? Rather than I could get up and just do 5 to 10 squats and I'm still moving my body.
Right. A lot of people don't get caught there. It's like the all or nothing. Like if my workout is scripted to be an hour and today is just not that day, they're like, well, I won't do anything. And you're like, but something's better than nothing. So even if it's like a 30-minute walk around the neighborhood, it's better than just having an extra cup of coffee because you have the time.
Yes. And I will say time and time again, many of my members tell me their favorite habit that they took away from my program is shifting the all or nothing habit to the always something habit.
Ooh, I like that.
Instead of all or nothing, it's always something. That's the new story. That's the new way that they think about it. And giving yourself grace, folks.
Oh, yes.
Giving yourself grace and understanding that your subconscious habit is just your subconscious habit. It is not you. And when people are breaking a habit, let's say you have a habit that's not serving your goals, right? I tell people, don't brain battle it. That doesn't work. Right?
No.
We all know how brain battles go, right? It's like hey, you should eat this pizza. And you're like, but I'm trying to eat healthier. And then it goes back and forth. And eventually you eat the pizza, right? And it's like, if you're trying not to do that, right, and you really don't want to, then it's really just a subconscious habit that's in place. And you can say, this is just a habit. It's not me.
Right.
So it's just separating the two, right? And then you can dismiss it that way. This is just a habit. It's not me. And then you get a habit urge when that happens too. You get that urge, right? That feeling in your body that's uncomfortable. So then this is just a habit urge. It's not me. So you're separating the two. And then you have to move your attention, folks. You are where your attention is. So, and you can think of it this way. You can't want what you're not thinking about. I'm going to say that one again. You cannot want what you're not thinking about.
Right.
So if you're not thinking about the thing, then you can't want it, right? So it's much easier when you move your attention to finally get what you want.
Yeah. You have to, I can't think of the quote right now, but it's like, if I aim at nothing, I'm always going to hit it.
Yes.
That's I got it. Nailed it right then.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And so many people, I feel like they think that they're doing the things, but they're not really focused. So it's like, it might be, I'm going to focus on not having pizza. And then I'm going to focus on, going to the gym 6 days a week. Then I'm going to focus on, running a marathon. And you're like, you're not going to see any progress because where's the main energy going?
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of times the focus is too scattered, right? Like with our members, it's like you can it's 2 to 3 things max a month, like 2 to 3 habits max. You try to do more than that, it becomes an overload, and then it just creates what we call resistance. And resistance, anytime there's more resistance, it's just going to hold you back from trying to go get those things. And it always comes back to sustainability. Like that's my biggest thing. And it's like, if we can sustain 2 new, big things, 2 new habits a month, 2 to 3, then you're going to have a massive shift that's going to last a lifetime, right? But when we try to do more than that, that's when it gets really tricky and really hard to sustain.
Right. So I want to go back I write notes for everyone that I talk to, because I'm like, most of you guys say, most who I interview always says really good things, and you just like brush it off like, oh, everyone knows what I'm talking about. So I'm like, wait, we got to circle back here. So it's funny. This whole book is from my podcast. So every interview, I like take at least 2 to 3 pages of notes.
I love it. You can sell the book after. You can sell your book after, right? Like,
so when I become
quotes from the podcast,
right? So I become rich and famous. Kurt Cobain draw this like crazy picture, and I think it just went for like $2 million. $2
million, yeah, absolutely. Just sold for that.
So all my crazy scripts and circles, I'm selling it for $2 million.
Million. Who wants it?
Right. I'm going to start a new movement, get grungy, and start a new movement. But you talked about resistance, and I like that because so many times I always try to get my clients to like, I got to pull them back because, they want to sprint. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the ways you kind of work with your clients to be like, hey, great, I got you. I know you want to do 50 things, but how do we kind of, talk them into like, what is resistance and why, slow is the new fast?
Yeah, I think resistance comes in a couple different forms, right? So there can be, of course, physical resistance, right? You're carrying a child.
Right.
Like that's an example of some of the women I work with, like that's a part of it, right? There's also physical resistance when it comes to like an injury would cause resistance and things like that. But then there's also resistance from our stories. Mm-hmm. Our stories create a lot of resistance as well. Perfect example of that is when you wake up in the morning, right? And you're like, you had the night before, you're like, I'm waking up and I'm working out this morning.
Yep.
But yet your mind your mind knows you better than anybody else, folks, and it knows how to sell you. So one of the best things you can do to remove resistance is start figuring out how you are sold by the stories that your mind tells you. So, for example, your mind's like, it's warm in the bed, right? I can do it tomorrow. You know what? I'm not going to be, my body isn't going to change today anyway. So blah, 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 right? Like all these stories that pop up, these are forms of resistance that are just trying to stop you, right? And when we think about the other, preparation is also a part of resistance, right? So, or lack of preparation. So, like when we are trying to help people eat healthy, like preparation, right? Like food prep is one of the best ways to be successful, right? But it's a habit, right? So it's a habit, and when it becomes who you are and what you do, you don't think about it anymore, right? And if you can get that in place, then there's way less resistance to eating healthy, right? If you put your clothes out, here's an example: you go to work, right? If any of you have ever just come home for a second and then you're like, I don't really feel like going back out to the gym, right?
If I come home, I'm done. I'm done.
That's an example of resistance. So resistance can come in so many forms, but I find that one of the biggest ones with my clients is their biggest resistance is not making a decision, right? So not deciding that this is what they're going to do, this is what they're committed to, right? And getting very clear, because if there's no clarity, then it gets very hard to know exactly what you are planning on doing. But if you know the day, the time, right, and exactly what you're going to do when you get there, you're removing a lot of the resistance when it comes to exercise. Okay, same goes for food prep, right? If you know the day, the time, exactly what you're prepping, right? You got a list, you had gotten all those food at the grocery store, or you had someone bring it to your house, you're going to have less resistance because it's so clear to your mind, right? If you've ever tried to shoot a basketball with your eyes closed, it's not easy, right? But if you get very clear and you can see it perfectly, it just helps people get in alignment. Now, I know what some people are thinking in their brain. They're like, but my brain doesn't do that. I'm not organized like that, right? I already know where they're going with it. And I hear you with that too. And it's just that you don't do that yet, right? Your mind isn't there yet, right? So it's not necessarily that you can't get there, right? That you can't develop that subconscious habit. It's just that it's just not there right now.
Yeah, I like what you just said. I'm not there yet. And I remember in all the personal development work there, they talk about affirmations, and a lot of times you'll be doing affirmations, and if your mind is just like, oh hell no,
bullshit, right?
you're like, if you're like, oh, I feel amazing and I'm a millionaire, and you do all these things, and you're saying it, but your brain's like, oh hell no. So one of the little tricks was that I'm not a millionaire yet. So it just gave my brain the opportunity to be like, well, could I be? Versus, declaring it already without me having to feel it just yet. And so I like the word yet. And you're right, because it is the planning.
Yep. And I find I much prefer to surpass the analytical mind and the limbic brain, because the thinking and the emotion, right? Emotion trumps logic most of the time.
Oh,
anyway.
all the time.
All the time, right? So the reality is that I like to just go straight to the source and get into the subconscious and the reptilian mind, so that we can actually because when you tell the subconscious mind those things, it accepts them because it just doesn't know. Right. But if you tell the logical mind's like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's not true. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you feel the emotion. You're like, but of course. And then you feel go bad. Right. So there's just, it's taking a detour to get what you want.
Right. And so I liked that, the plan, but it also puts me in motion. It puts me in action, because it's really easy for me to start kind of like that list making in my head. And then, as you said, the thinking brain takes over and starts to tell you why it can't happen.
Absolutely. It's so good. There's no one that knows you better than you. Like
Right.
it knows exactly how to sell you on why you can't do it.
Right. It's like if you're like, oh, we're talking right now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to work out. Great. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to totally work out tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to happen. And I'm going to be cooking dinner. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work out tomorrow. But if I didn't get off the phone with you right now and then lay out my clothes, then it's already planted the seed that it's going to happen. Where if I'm just talking myself up, and like you said, I'm laying in bed tomorrow morning, and I live in Boston, and so let's just imagine it's February. It's cold, it's dark, and the alarm goes off at 5. My body's like, yeah, it was a great idea.
Yeah.
We'll go after work. And then like after work, there'll be another reason that my brain will say, well, Kim, there's always tomorrow.
Yep. And that's where deciding and commitment come into play, right? At a subconscious level, right? And just knowing that I am a committed person. Self-integrity is big when it comes to that as well. Like we work a lot with our clients just on the self-integrity, just keeping promises to yourself, right? And when you don't keep a promise to yourself, and this is a question I ask people all the time, I say, well, when you don't keep a promise to yourself, what do you do? Like, how do you react? Do you beat yourself up? Do you just brush it off like, nah, I'll do it another time, right? Because then we're dealing with an issue of enoughness again when it comes to self-worth and valuing your word to yourself.
Right.
So there's a piece around that as well.
Well, I liked what you just said about self-integrity. And I feel that happens a lot, that I can commit to you, but I can't commit to me.
And that is a worth issue. And that's really like like I said, and it comes back to the number one hypnotherapy thing that I do is the enoughness piece. It's literally, and I say this to people all the time. I'm like, if your hot water heater broke tomorrow, you would find the time and the money to get it fixed, correct?
Right.
If your kids needed braces, you would find the time and money to get it fixed. How come you're any different? And it makes them do that, right? Because they're like, why am I different? Why do I not see me investing in me time, money, and effort and energy the same as I do with all of these other things?
Right.
Because you are worth all of those things. If mom's not healthy and happy, it is hard for the rest of the house to be. It's just harder.
Right.
Right? I learned on my honeymoon 8 years ago, happy wife, happy life. And it is it's a belief I live by every day of my life.
1,000%.
and my kids, same thing. They get it. They're like, when mom's happy, if she gets her sleep and she does yoga and she's eating healthy, like the whole house feels it. We're happy campers.
Right. Yeah. If mom's out of sync, then you're like, there's hells to pay.
So that's why I help her, in the same fashion that I would help any of my clients, and more so. It's about making sure that there's that support there, right? From if for anyone out there that's listening, it's the significant other. If they're not supporting you, does that add some resistance? Absolutely. So that comes back to another thing that could be causing some resistance. Does it mean you can't get through that and push through that? No, we've helped tons of people get through that as well. But it's helpful when the significant other's on board, right? When they are supportive of the health and well-being of their partner. Yeah,
I do have. I've had clients, and I've also have had friends who, for some reason, I feel like the partner feels like they're not going to be. I don't know if it's as important or feel left behind, or there's some tug that makes them unsupportive of the journey that the other partner is about to go on.
Well, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Worthiness?
It's the meaning that the partner gives to it.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, well, and it also it creates this magnifying glass effect where it's like, well, they're trying to get healthy. And the person's like, but I don't really want to do that or feel ready to do that. But then I feel a certain way that they're doing this. And then, what if then it creates all of this other stuff where they're like, am I going to get left behind?
Right.
Like there's insecurities that pop up there too. So I find that, sometimes we need to work through that together, right, as a team.
Yeah, I feel like that's I guess one of the biggest feelings is I'm going to get left behind, or maybe the other partner's like, I don't really care that much about my health, and so it's a challenge because as you're trying to do the right thing, you want your partner to take care of their health as well.
Yes, I can't tell you how many times I have people reach out to me about their spouse. And I tell them time and time again, I will be glad to have a conversation with them. It's very rare if I ever get a call from that person because you have to want it yourself, folks. Time and time again, it has to come from the inside, and you have to want it. And I find most people are away from pain rather than towards pleasure, folks.
Right.
A lot of times there has to be some sense of urgency. Most people, it's very rare if I have a client that comes to me and is like, just like, I call them a wild card. If they just are like, you know what, I just feel like getting healthy. Nothing's wrong. I feel great all the time. I just want to, it's very rare. It's usually like they're starting to get some aches or pains, or they have some, like I work a lot with gut health issues. So a lot of times they'll have digestive issues and things like that, that lead them to be like, I need help, support, and so on and so forth with this.
Yeah, 100%. I think if your health isn't a priority, it takes a health scare to sometimes push you into the door.
Unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately. So you talked about, we kind of glanced over this. So how you talked about how you kind of work in that subconscious mind. So you start by using NLP, and it's for people who don't know what NLP is. What would you say NLP is?
Yeah, so it just goes to the deep, to break it down in a real, like, not to get too crazy, but just to make it understandable, is that like let's just use setting a goal on New Year's Eve, right? So you have this first top piece of the pyramid, which is, and I'm just going to explain the logical levels of NLP because I feel like this helps people understand it really well. Okay. So like when people set a goal, right, they have an environment that they're trying to create, right? I want to lose 40 pounds. Boom. That's the environment that they want to create. Okay. And then they get to the next piece of the puzzle, the behavior. They're like, okay, what do I need to do? That's the next thing. They're like, right, I'm going to lose this. So what do I need to do? So they're like, I'm going to join a gym or 2 gyms. I'm going to do a couple diets, right? I'm going to whatever it is, right? Right. They get in this inception mode where they're just excited and they're ready to go. And they have this environment they're trying to create and this behavior, right? And then some people get to the next level, not everybody, but some people get to the next level, which is they're thinking about skills. Okay. What skills do I need to have in order to achieve this behavior and achieve this overall environment goal? Right. So the skills could be food preparation, could be quality movement, right? I can move well. So when I move well, I exercise well, or just knowing how to do it, right? Sleeping could be a skill, right? I will say time and time again, sleeping and quality sleep and getting that habit dialed in is one of the biggest keys to overall weight release, hands down. But a lot of people don't think about that skill piece, right? So far, people, if they do those 3 things, that's usually where it stops for most people, okay? But when I'm working with them, I start them thinking 4 layers deeper, right? Like, so the next thing is, what are the stories that I need to have in order to achieve this goal? So a story might be, I'm unstoppable and I'm able to prep my food each and every day, right? I enjoy eating healthy would be a story, right? We could go on and on about stories, right? But thinking about like, what does your mind tell you every day? And if you don't know what I mean when I say story, folks, just think of like, whenever your mind talks to you, you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. If you were your thoughts, then who's listening? That's the way I explain it. So stepping past that, just thinking like, what are the thoughts that you have? And a lot of people have thoughts about exercise. They're like, I need to get in shape before I can go to the gym, because they have a thought or a story like, I'm not good enough, or I don't have the skill to go to the gym, or whatever it is. So it's changing those stories, right? That make it so that you start telling yourself better things to get different results.
Gotcha.
And we go down a little bit further, and we're looking at the values that a person has, okay? And we were saying this when we were talking about the spouses, right? Like, so if one spouse has a value of, I value my health, right? And the other one doesn't, okay? It's not good, bad, right or wrong. It just is what it is, folks. And the reality is if we don't know what we value, it's very hard to figure out where we're going to where we're spending our time. And the way you can figure out right now what you value is look at what you do each and every day. Look at where you spend your money. Look at where you spend your time. Look at where you spend your energy. Look at what you do. Look at your life in a big nutshell. It will tell you exactly what you value.
Right.
It will show you clear as day, right? What you value. And it's just what you value right now. Now, people are like, well, Matt, how do you change your values? Well, you just decide to value something more, right? I'll give you an example. I destroyed my health and well-being when I built my first business, which was a fitness facility, ironically, folks. But I put my own health and well-being on the back burner because I didn't feel good enough. I didn't know all of this stuff at that point in time, but I was chasing being enough my whole life since I was a little kid, like since my learning disabilities and all that stuff since I was a little kid. And I realized I had built a fitness facility trying to be enough. It was a wild thing, but not to get too deep into that. The reality, what the point I'm trying to make with that is I realized I needed to shift my self-care value, needed to go to the top of the pyramid. The reason is it needed to be my number one, because if you don't take care of yourself, then money and family and none of that's going to matter because you're not going to be here.
Right.
So that was a huge shift and aha for me. And it was so hard because it was not what I was used to. I'm so good at helping everybody else. Give, right? So my natural habitual state at that point was serve everybody else first and I'll get to me later, right? Yep. And so I needed to shift that and make it so my oxygen mask had to go on first. And of course, there were some stories that started popping up. That's selfish, but they need this, but my kids need that, and I need to do this for my wife, and what about this, blah, 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 right? There's a lot of stories that popped up. So I needed to, when I shifted my values, new stories came up. So I needed to go back and readdress that, right? And then below values is beliefs at a core level. What do you believe?
Yeah.
Do you believe? And this is where it gets real, folks, because there are many people out there that believe no matter what they do, they will always go back to where they were from a weight perspective.
100%. They do.
They have a subconscious belief, right? Or a conscious belief that, and like one of the biggest fears a lot of people come to me with is because of their past experience, and it's all based off of their past circumstances and experience. It's like when I lose weight, the fear is when I'm not working with you anymore, Matt, it will all come back. And that is why the number one thing I work on with people is subconscious identity, belief, values, habits, right? Stories, all of these shifts, because these are the things that actually get people results, right? I missed habits there. I don't even know what I was thinking. So habits comes it's like habits come with stories and all that stuff. But it's habits are so tied to beliefs.
Yeah.
They're so tied to beliefs. If you don't believe that you will be successful and get healthy and lose the weight and get where you want to, if you don't believe you can achieve the goal, it's already over. It's already game, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there has to be, and the thing is, this is one important thing though. You don't need to believe it at the very beginning yet, right? That can build as you change your stories and as you change your values, right? Motivation actually happens after you get started, folks. A lot of people think they have to be motivated
Yes.
to get started, but it actually, once you get moving, right? The number one habit I teach people, number one, this is the number one, it's the do it anyways habit.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I mean by that is like when your mind says, I don't feel like it, you do it anyways. Because once you start doing it anyways, that will carry over to everything that you do. Right. I read this amazing study about this guy. When he released 300 pounds, and what he started his first month, he actually didn't do any exercise or anything. He just got up in the morning, got his shoes on, went to the gym, walked in the gym, stayed there for 2 minutes and left. And he just was developing the habit of showing up.
Oh,
Just doing it anyways, right? And I was like,
that's huge.
super, super interesting. And it made me think like, that's really most people, their hardest part is just getting started.
Yeah.
Right? And Mel Robbins created an awesome book called The 5-Second Rule. And it basically, and I'm sure you guys have talked about that at some point in this podcast. It's just basically you count yourself down, just like you count your kids down, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, before your brain talks you out of it, right? And if your brain does start talking you out of it, do it anyways, have it. It's massively game changer.
Yeah, I like to do it anyway because it's like it goes back to what we talked about, the self-integrity, right? So I can start to kind of create I call it good, better, best. So I can start to create my layers. So it's, the guy could be like, you know what? I'm not ready to go to the gym, but like I can put on sneakers. That's good. Right. Better is I actually got in the car and drove to the gym.
Yep.
Best is, I got in and I only walked for 5 minutes on the treadmill, but I did it. And so, giving yourself these like little escalators so that you don't feel like, so many of us, write down like, I got to go for 2 hours and it has to look like this and blah, 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 blah. And then
it doesn't at all, right? Because it's not, like I said, it's not in alignment with that identity. And as you've seen, we go much layer deep, right? We have habits, we have stories, we have values, we have beliefs is the one that we're on, right? And beliefs are huge. If your belief doesn't align with that, like that little thing that you're doing, it's not going to work, right? It has to be in alignment. We do what our habits and our beliefs are.
Right.
We don't get, I love this quote. We don't get what we want. We get our habits.
Oh, James Clear. Love him. And it's true. I always, I always tell people it's about your habits and really starting to kind of like create these like little small kind of micro habits so that will lead to other things. And, I always say to them, like, think about your coffee. No one thinks about, do you put your cream in before your sugar or the sugar before your cream? Like, you don't think about it. You just like coffee time and you just do it and you're drinking coffee and you're like, what did I do? You don't even know. You kind of like blacked out.
Yep. And a perfect example of that is if you've ever driven somewhere and you get there and you're like, how did I get here? Right. Yeah. You went on autopilot. Most of our lives are run by the subconscious, 95% actually.
Yeah.
They did an awesome study in Europe where they hooked people's brains up to electrodes that measured their blood flow, and they gave them a choice A and a choice B. And 95% of the time, 7 to 10 seconds before the person actually made the decision, their brain made it for them. So subconsciously, we are subconscious machines, folks. We're just running on autopilot most of the time.
Yeah, and that, that's one of the things I try to break my clients of. It's like, some things you just do, and I'm like, well, why do you do that?
That's the good questions.
And a lot of them are just like, ooh, and then like that, like it's just what I've always done.
Yep. Yep. But
And
that
so,
awareness is so powerful, right? It's so powerful. And it starts to help them understand the beliefs that they have or the stories that they have, right? Right. Like, and here's an example of a story. It's what I've always done.
yeah,
Right. And it's because there's a belief that's supporting that behavior, right? There's a belief that's been supporting that. And the last part of the of the uh, of the logical levels in NLP is identity.
mm,
And this is everything, right? It's how you're being. Most people try to do everything, right? They're trying to do all of the things, but at a deeper level, how are you being, right? And there's so many ways we can think about how to be, right? Like, are
right,
you being committed? Are you being responsible? Are you being self-integral? Are you being ready? Are you being willing? Are you being invested? Are you being like we could go all day, right? But it's figuring out what are the ways that right now that you're being that aren't necessarily serving you,
right,
right? So if you think of like the habits you have, or if like we talked about self-integrity, if we're not keeping promises to ourselves, right? Why do we do that? Right? And when you change that, I mean, that one, like I tell people, like there's pretty much three that I've found to be massively game changer for most of the people I work with, is being 100% responsible, being committed, and being self-integral. And when you shift those three, it creates a complete ripple effect in your overall health and well-being.
right. And then I like that NLP approach because it at every level it unearths something else that I might not have thought about. Like, just the how am I being, where it makes me be like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, if you were someone who were 100 pounds lighter, how
Yeah,
would you be?
yeah,
If you were the person who finished the marathon, how would you be? Or the person who, actually prepped their meals, how
yeah,
would you be? And it makes them, I've always been the coach that is like, I don't tell you what to do. I ask you questions because you know the answer.
yeah.
Because, I always equate it to, did you ever have a corporate job?
Uh, I was a teacher for many years.
Okay, so you know how like the district would say, the school has to do this, and then the principals would come down and say, teachers, because the district said you have to do this, and then like you were just like following this like plan that you're like, I don't buy into any of this bullshit, but
Oh yeah, all the time. 16 years of that. Oh, 100.
yeah, yeah, like I'm buying into bullshit that I'm just doing. And so that's why I always tell people, I'm like, I go in a corporate structure, like, the board of directors tells you what to do. Then it comes down to the president of the company, and the company is like, tells who's running in the company what to do. And I'm like, you never hooked in. Where
Yeah,
for you, like you got to hook into your goals. Because if I don't connect to your goals, it's just another thing on my to-do list. But if
yep,
it lights me up, excites me, I'm going to roll out of bed and be like, yeah, let's do this because you create your own motivation.
yep, yeah. But a lot of people try to get their motivation externally, and
Mm,
that actually can screw them over, right? Unfortunately,
yeah.
and it's shifting that too.
Yeah, it is shifting that. And I think, what you've kind of just like the levels that you've kind of stepped through really helps to get people to think versus just go through, well, I saw something on TV and I thought that would be a good thing to try. And, it might get them to ask a question for themselves so that they can kind of press that pause button.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And the only last thing that's not on the logical levels, that is like probably the number one thing that I do that I find really helps people, and this may help your audience, is just examining what your lowest standards are. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is that we have standards in every area of our lives, folks. We have standards in our relationship that if the partner drops below a low standard, you'll leave that person,
you're
right?
right.
Same in our jobs. If your job gets to a certain point where it's bad enough, you will leave that job, right? But we also have lowest standards, whether known or unknown. We have lowest standards in what we will put into our body nutritionally, right? We have lowest standards when it comes to exercise. Some of our lowest standard is none, right? But that's the thing. So it's just really paying attention to what is your lowest standard. And this is the question I ask my members. Is your lowest standard screwing you over, right? Or, because when you get your lowest standard to this point, when you get it to a point in which it allows you to maintain and sustain or improve, that is a beautiful lowest standard to have.
Yeah.
And it's different. And the biggest thing is it's different than rules.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a fan of rules. Like I don't tell people what to do or what they need to do or any of those. You and me are the same in that boat. Like that's not how this world works. But standards, we all have them, whether we are aware of what our standards are or not. Right. So it's just paying attention. What do I allow in my life?
Yeah. Oh goodness, I love that. I love that so much.
So it's do I allow people to treat me a certain way? Do I allow my own thoughts to talk shit to me, right? Do I allow, like we could do this in so many different areas, but lowest standards are huge.
They are huge because it's like, I talk a lot about non-negotiables. So it's like, you have to pick your non-negotiables. Like, what are the 3 things you could do day in and day out that makes you feel healthy? And so you could also flip it and be like, well, what's the lowest common denominator for you? And so that way you kind of say, well, if I am hungry, I won't go to McDonald's. And you'll start to think about what your other alternatives are beside fast food.
Well, it comes back to identity. It's like, instead of saying like, I can't go to McDonald's, I just don't do that, right? Like, because it's part of who you are, right? Like, I don't do that. And it makes it so much easier because you've made a decision and you're committed and you've decided that this is just not what I do.
Yeah.
So then it's just easier.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Matt, this has just been like, first of all, the fact that I'm like, you're my first dude, this has just been fabulous. I absolutely have loved this conversation. And I just know that like the journey that we took the listeners on, they will absolutely love it because we talked about mindset, but we didn't talk about it in this like woo-woo, hairy fairy, let's light some candles and like figure this out.
Yeah, I can't. I don't do it. I know that side of things and I appreciate it. I just find that if your listeners don't walk away with, like, you have to walk away with things you can be, do, and have, right? So, I like the law of attraction. I like it, but like you said, it's important to understand the pieces of the puzzle that we need, right?
Right. And I loved how like you laid out the puzzle and you laid out questions, right? I'm just like you. I love good questions. And for my clients who are listening, like, oh God, Kim ask a lot of questions. And so, and I ask a lot of hard questions. And, I know my coach asked me some hard questions and I'm like, damn it. Like, can you just give me like a softball today?
Oh my goodness. I hear that from my members all the time. They're like, can we just not do this today?
Right. Like, can you just ask me about my day? Like, if I just say fine, can you just accept that without trying to go deeper?
That's coach. That's what coaches do.
That is. So if I wasn't a coach, I'd probably be a lawyer or a prosecutor.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So I ask every person who comes on my show, what makes them feel magical?
Man, that's a great question. See, then here's another good question. I think what makes me feel magical is just there's really 2 parts to it. It's my ability to connect with women. Like I feel like that, like being a male that can connect and this is important, not know what they're going through, because I will never know ever, folks, but I understand on many different levels and I can relate and I can really align
Mm.
and be there to support. And I do it in a subconscious way. So I can actually go in and do hypnotherapy that allows people to get free
Mm.
like that. Like really let 20, 30, 40, 50 years of stuff that you've been holding on to, like gone.
Right.
And it blows my mind. Like literally, like when I started doing it, I was like, this is legit. It seemed like magic. And I was like,
Right.
this is wild stuff. But it just started to make me realize like it just gives me another tool in my tool belt to create magical results for people
Awesome.
and give them what they truly want. And I just feel so blessed to be able to work with so many amazing women in my program and just in my communities. And it's just, I love my life, and I love this is what I'm on the planet for, folks. Like it's my dharma, and I'm just so grateful that people let me do this each and every day. It's just
That,
awesome.
that is awesome because you're right. It just, when you help someone who has been struggling for years, and you just see like the light in their eye, like just turn on, you're just like, whoa, and I did that.
Yeah, and it's more like I just know the ripple effect that has. Like like when I was, being a teacher for 16 years, like you work with kids, and helping kids is awesome. And what I've found is that when you help mom, you help the kids more.
Right.
Like it's just when you can make that shift so quickly, create that ripple effect. There's nothing more that I love that so freaking much. It's just my favorite thing, and I think that's makes me feel magical.
Good. I never know what to expect when people say when I ask that question, and every time the answer always blows me away.
For sure, it's a great ending question. I love it.
So thank you so much for your time. Where can people connect with you on the socials?
Yeah, so my company is called The Potential You, and it's not like the YOU, it's the letter U. So the potential -U, but on Instagram, it's at the potential you. On Facebook, it's at the potential you, and it's just all one word, but just with the letter U. And we have Facebook groups and all that stuff. And if you jump into those groups, we give away free courses and just a bunch of value. Because this is my belief, folks. I believe that knowledge should be free. I think it should be something where I can tell you exactly what to do. The only thing I ever charge for is implementation. That's it.
Yes.
It's because you can go online and there's endless amounts of information, you may have noticed, folks, and it can get really confusing. So what I love to be able to do is help people just get very, very clear about what they need to do for themselves. And that's that's what my main focus on all the social media channels and all of my Facebook groups and all that stuff is all about.
Yeah, you're 100% that, I can have all the information in the world. I could have this book on my desk, but if I don't open it up and read it and apply it, then it's just information.
Well, that's literally the reason I love it, because that's why I named my company The Potential You, because I read a Napoleon Hill quote and he said, knowledge is only potential power. Action is power. And I was like, and it like hit me, and like that, I was like, that's what I'm going to call. Like, it's the potential you. It's just that being, the doing, the having, all of those pieces put together that really finally gets us where we want to go, right?
It does. All right. Oh, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fabulous. I could probably talk to you for hours on end.
This is great, Kim. I so appreciate you having me on. I so appreciate you trusting me to be the first male on your program, and it's been an absolute blast. So thank you.
You are quite welcome. So, hey guys, make sure you reach out to Matt. Like, he's got some good stuff here. Like, I don't bring on just anybody. So you know that. So reach out to him. I'm really, really deep into this NLP stuff. I do believe that a lot of us have a lot of unconscious shit that we just need to release. And that will just give us that extra hurdle over all of the things that we were trying to achieve. So thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
thank you for listening to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you've made it this far, yay. I'm thinking you enjoyed the show. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Jefferson Coach. In order for me to keep sharing this message, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. New episodes are available every Wednesday. The Fit Girl Magic podcast is intended to provide you with tips, tools, and strategies that will help you make better decisions about your health. I really appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you so much.